as you gain experience, as you grow in business, you're going to become wiser, you're going to smarten up, and you're going to realize that like you've been undercharging and not capturing time, resources, energy, material, and you're going to get better.
Tyler, today you wanna swing it back 10 years.
Take a trip down memory lane, bro.
Was it you DMing me about the stain color on the door I did 12 years ago?
Yeah, I was just getting the juices flowing.
It was nice. I like your profile picture.
Speaking to a couple of people in the industry, a buddy who was looking to go out on his own and being away on vacation, I was thinking a lot about 10, 15 years ago and starting my business and the struggles that I faced and how much different things are now, and even just a lot of the insight and communication that we get from people within our community who are just starting out or a few years into business, and how helpful it's been. So I wanted to talk a little bit about when Nick started his business, what things looked like when I started my business, some of the struggles, what we do differently, and just dive into that a little bit. It's been a while since we've really talked a lot about the past and how much things have changed, but that was the goal for today's podcast episode. Just a little bit of a blast from the past, some reflection, see how far we've come.
This podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows.
Wait, hold on. All right, so
okay.
for this,
for this
Andersen,
yeah.
Andersen, our connection at Andersen is Ellie Knips. That was the original, right? Like, I think she went from another company to Andersen. We knew her husband, Casey, which you all probably know, and she's been our main point of contact at Andersen, responsible for so much of what we do, a ton of opportunity, personally, professionally, and very grateful for her. But I was away on vacation last week, and she wound up being 2 miles down the road from us in Belize on the coast. And so I got to go out to dinner with Ellie and Casey and their son. Their daughter ditched us. She was a little bit tired. But we grabbed dinner together in Central America, which was like completely unanticipated and unplanned. And I was like, this is just somewhat insane. So that's our Andersen pitch. To me, so many of our partners, it's about the product. Yeah, it's about their service. Yeah, it's about what they do. But like, it's about the people more so than anything else. And Ellie has been wonderful to us all of these years. So thank you very much to Andersen, and especially Ellie, for all the support over the years. Andersen Windows and Doors, check them out.
I'm going to add to that because everyone at Andersen has been great. But I showed up to my office the other day and I had a package, and I'm trying to reach it without looking. And this right here is my favorite book in the world, Unreasonable Hospitality. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, I've talked about this. Why in the world would someone send this to me? They already know that I like this book. And it's signed by Will Gradera, who's the author, and Chris, the CEO of Andersen, sent it to me.
That's amazing.
Because he heard that I liked this book. So we're not going to get into the technicality of Andersen Windows today. As Tyler said, we appreciate them as a partner, and they've been a massive support, all of them. So,
thanks, Andersen.
And this podcast is also brought to you by Harnish Workwear. Guys, spring is coming. Everyone's going to want new t-shirts. My team's already asking if we're updating the t-shirts, if they can keep wearing the old ones, because I am notorious for changing the design ever so slightly and telling them to throw away or archive the old model. But if you guys do not have work shirts for your company, reach out to Harnish Workwear and get into their H-Label program. They can either take a previous design, a sketch design, or they can start and handle all the designs super quickly and super efficiently and print them on, I think, the highest quality t-shirt that I've ever worn, because it's literally the only t-shirt I wear with different branding and or no branding on it, because it apparently makes my muscles look big. But I just think I have big muscles.
They're nice t-shirts.
I thought you were going to say those are nice muscles.
They're nice muscles too. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I do cheat on Harnish and I do wear other brand t-shirts, but the Harnish t-shirt is a nice t-shirt, especially when it's branded for your company. So I should probably take a note out of your book though and throw some of my old t-shirts away and get some fresh ones, because mine are a little tired. A little tired.
Check it out, harnishworkwear.com.
I was curious what some of like the early struggles that you had with your business, just what the early days looked like. Obviously, we've been in business, I don't know, 15 years, maybe less, for you, but like what you started doing has changed so dramatically from what you're doing now, and I think it would be neat just to get some insight as to like what those first jobs looked like, why clients were hiring you, you know, what the structure and the setup was, kind of how you were grinding it out back in those days, just as like a bit of a blast to the past, and maybe discuss how that relates to like what we're doing now and how it's different.
Well, interesting timing, because I had a college kid reach out to me, asked if he could hop on a call with me for 30 minutes, and today at lunch we were just chatting, and he asked me similar questions. He's like, bring me back to like some of the first jobs, and you know, how you got them, what would you do different, like why'd you do it, you know. And also yesterday I got a comment on a post, and it was like, what color stain is this? I don't know if you saw it.
I saw that,
and I was like, what is she talking about? And I'm like, that post is literally from 2014. I'm like, I don't even know how you get that far back. Like I don't know. Like, did it get refed to her?
Were there hashtags?
Oh,
maybe she was searching hashtag. I mean, it'd be weird that came up, but maybe there's like a specific hashtag that she searched.
I don't know. I feel like hashtags weren't a thing. Maybe they were. I don't know. Either way, so just like it kind of triggered a lot of memories about some of my first projects. So when I left, because I was doing commercial high-rise construction as a project manager, when I left there, my first job was a kitchen renovation for friends of mine. And I remember, you know, I remember a lot of things. Number one, I remember being scared shitless of pulling a permit.
Yeah.
And I almost didn't pull a permit.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I can't even think about getting a permit and what they're going to ask me, because I don't know.
And then what's required for like inspections.
Required. And then my buddy was like, yo, can we rip out the rafters and blow the ceiling way up? I think it'd be so cool. I'm like, fuck, I need a permit.
Yeah.
And so I got an engineer. I'll never forget the engineer. Like, he lived down the street, and he called me, goes, hey, I got to review this with you. And he basically gave me a tour of his house, told me stories for 3 hours, and then walked through how he wanted me to execute the clipping of the rafter, the collar ties, and basically restructuring it. And it just, I mean, a lot of distant memories at this point. But it was exactly the same thing, where I would be built on, I was by myself, I had no help, and then, you know, I would have this project, and it was my first project, and I knew I needed to line up work, and I had like opportunities kind of brewing. I had this one whole house renovation that went before I started my company. He was like, hey, I want you to help me renovate it, like do a full renovation. I'm going to handle demo, and I'll let you know when that's done. And I mean, looking back, it's funny because, you know, so many red flags about how that project unfolded. But at the time it was, hey, this is a whole house remodel. And they were an architect. And, but I would be on the tools during the day, and at night I was either estimating work or I was in my shop building something for the job the next day. And I took on everything, dude. I remember, you know, I actually looked, my contract value for that whole house renovation.
Yeah.
And I didn't do everything.
For the architect?
Yeah, for the architect. It was let's just say it's 3,000 square feet. The outside of the house didn't get stripped. It was like patching, roofing, and siding here and there. I think I replaced all the windows. but I think I contracted some of the subs, but it was like a hodgepodge. My total contract was like 170 grand.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I remember looking at it like years later. I'm like, I don't remember what my scope of work was, but there's no way I actually made money. And the kid I talked to today, that's a student, he had asked about, that specifically about making money. And I was like, when you're a solo guy and say I charged 170 grand for that job, like I still put 170 grand in my pocket. It might have taken me twice as long, but it's still the same cash in my pocket.
Yeah.
And I didn't recognize that and realize that, I was working for such a low dollar value until I had employees. And when I charged, 170 grand for the next job and it took twice as long and I had no money because now I'm upside down, it was like, oh, wait. That cash goes out a lot faster because now they're working a lot more hours, and I agreed to the hourly rate.
Yeah. I think when you first start out, or at least when I first started out, there was a lot of freebies or concessions that I had to chalk up to just experience and like learning. Right, even talking about permits and not understanding that, or meeting with the engineer to walk what you need to do through that job. Like, that's just part of it. That's an investment in yourself. Yeah, it's an investment for that job. But, like, those are tools and knowledge that you have to gain at some point, and that's just for yourself. Like, that's not a freebie where it's like, I'm doing this for free and I'm never going to get a return on this. Like, that's an investment in yourself. So there's a lot of them. But then, like, there's a lot of freebies that you're doing, like just running around and meeting with clients and giving them estimates, or getting on a phone or telling somebody what you should do with something that you will never recoup. Like, what do you think the split was for you as far as, like, when you're first starting out and you're doing this and you're looking at this job of like, hey, these are just concessions that I have to make. It's the educational tax, so to speak, versus just dumb shit that you shouldn't have been doing for free.
What do you think? What do you mean the split? Like how much?
Yeah, like do you think half of your time was like
at least half of my time?
Yeah.
I mean, I think about, dude, there's so many things I did early on that, looking back, are completely unacceptable, just to be totally frank. And I like
from a work perspective.
Yeah. And I actually told this story at a presentation at IBS one year about how I built this pergola, and I totally botched it. And on stage, I remember telling the story, and it was the first time I ever told it. And at the end of my presentation, I actually said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to drive to that house, and if it's still standing, I'm going to offer to replace it entirely for free. Because it was like, it had been burning in my mind for years, and I drove by the house and it was gone. It definitely didn't survive a season. But it's the same thing on the business side, where it's like, there was so many times where, I would just throw an estimate together and like no thought, and just be like, all right, I just got to get this out, and shit would stick, and then I'd have to figure it out. And I had no idea if I was making money. It was just like, hey, this seems reasonable. Or, I feel like that is the part, like, especially now, right? Like 12 years later, looking at how much of a process we have, and like the things that we have in place, and to think like none of that shit existed when I started, and nor did I even know that half of it was a requirement, despite my experience in commercial.
Yeah, that I do find that somewhat interesting, being that like you were dealing with inspectors and obviously full permitted projects and comprehensive budgets.
$100 million budget.
Yeah, that like you then go to residential and it's like, oh, I'm just gonna wing it. But I like, it is, you also have to take into account that you just don't know what you don't know. And even I can recall starting out, and I grew up working for my dad, and we were working on a lot of rental properties, just stuff that wasn't high end, and you weren't getting paid to do stuff. And like, I never, like, site protection wasn't a thing. Like if you had to go into somebody's house and cut a wall out, like you went in and cut a wall out and it was on them if they didn't move stuff out of there. And I started working for some other people and they're laying down drop cloths and then like setting up plastic and isolating a space and then getting a porta potty. And I was like, what is this black magic? So like I just didn't know that. And then I think one of the big issues is as you learn, you start implementing and integrating those practices, but you're either at a point where you can't capture those costs, your client base won't be willing to pay for them, or you just don't know that you need to charge more for that. You just think that that's normal, and you start like eating the cost. That was something that burnt me for a long time. Is like, yeah, it's getting better. The jobs are getting more complex. My execution's better, but I wasn't ever like really charging more for it. Mm-hmm. Like the numbers were bigger, but then I just put more shit into the job. So like at the end of the day, I was probably making less money.
Yeah, I think it's a big reason why, when you talk to these bigger builders, like we had him on the podcast years ago, but, local trade here, met up with him walking down Comm Ave in Boston, and he's, showing me some projects he's doing because we're considering working together. And he's like, what's your goal? I'm like, I really want to do the high-end stuff. I want to be in like the $10 to $20 million projects. He goes, no, you don't. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, dude, you don't make any money. And I'm like, that's okay. Like, they're still cool. He's like, no, I'm being serious. Like, when they get big, you're not just making more money. In fact, it's, there's so much process that goes into it. Even if you're complete shit at the process, and it still requires a level of management and oversight that costs more money than you ever really think it does. And if for the sake of like that, if you're able to actually get the process dialed, you start realizing just how expensive it is. And then you are battling with the fact that you are now substantially more expensive than the other guy, because the other guy has a quote unquote process, but it's shit. And he's going to just figure it out, and it goes, it kind of goes awry.
So
I just want to add one thing to that, because this is, I think, the bigger frustration that I'm dealing with, like currently, and I think going back, to when I started, this is something I never expected to deal with, but when we're looking at a project, we put together a tier 1 price. It's $5 million. Client wants to be at like, I don't know. I think he communicated like 3.5, whatever it was. And I'm like, dude, this project's, it's just not a $3.5 million project. It's a $5 million project. And and back and forth, they were like, well, we're comfortable getting up to like 4, but we got to really figure this out. I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to work with you and help develop it, and get you to a $4 million project. And got the call, hey, we're going to move forward with another builder. So I sidebar with the architect. I'm like, hey, give me the lowdown. Like, how far off was I from the other builder? And he's like, the other builder was $4 million. And I was like, because he asked for a $4 million budget, yeah. Right? He goes, yeah, I think you and I both know it's going to be 5. I'm like, this is the fucking issue here.
Yeah.
Is that it's 5, I know it's 5, I'm being honest, and I'm being penalized because I'm being honest. So this guy's, whether he's a good guy or not, let's just put that aside, like, he's lying. He's showing you, here's how you build a $4 million house. And maybe he's not lying. Like, hey, you can build a house for $4 million, here's how you do it. But he knows that that's not going to be the cost. He knows that the client's not going to want, no recessed lights and just switched outlets everywhere. But hey, I'm showing you a $4 million house.
Do you think that that's lack of experience? Like, is this builder,
no, it somebody? Absolutely not.
So
no.
like they understand what's
opposite.
going on. Basically, the client's telling them 4, like, we want to be at 4. Okay, yeah, we can do 4. But here's like 4, really
knowing that it's going to be 5.
There's no scope. The details have not been ironed out at this point.
Yeah. Like, even if they are, it's just like, we're assuming there's no rebar in the foundation. Okay, it's hillside.
Yeah.
Like, what? I really think it's the opposite. And the issue is, I can either continue to be super honest and be like, this is what it's going to cost. and try to get my point across, or I just play the same game everyone else does and show them what they want to hear, and then go in and then change order the hell out of the job until we make money.
To me, I know it works and people do it day in and day out. I just don't get how you remain in business, how the architects are good with that, and how you're getting referrals and leads. Does it get to the point in these jobs where the clients just forget that they wanted to be at $4 million initially, and at that point the builder has convinced them that things changed.
I think
it's all legitimate.
I think it's that, and I think it's fatigue.
Yeah.
Your minimum 12 months, right? Like your minimum building a house, it's going to take you at least 12 months. You start realizing it's off the rails. Like you're at a point of, do I fire them or do I just get through this and deal with it? And most of the time it's like, you're just going to get through it and deal with it. And, and a lot of times, sure, the client can be to blame. Like, oh yeah, you're adding stuff. Like, do you want this? Yes, I want that. Okay, well, it's this much money. Okay, yeah, I guess I do. I guess I'll spend that much. The dumbed down version I've shared before is like buying a vehicle. It's like I go in, hey, I want my payment to be $600 a month. Here you go. They find me 84-month loan, $600 a month. Boom, I got what I want. And then I go to the finance guy and he's like, do you want floor mats? I'm like, how much are they? Do you want the wheel and tire package just in case you run over a nail? Yeah, I might as well. It's like, do you want to prepay for maintenance? It's usually 30% cheaper. Yeah, sure. All right, now my payment's $707. It's like, but I was in the driver's seat and I decided to add all those things. And I think this is what we're talking about in the terms of like optics. Sometimes it's just, the client has to be in the driver's seat. And if they want to be $4 million, I think that there's a world where if a client says, I want to be $4 million, my approach could be, here you go. This is a $4 million project. We can do that. We can build a version of this house for $4 million. But it needs to be immediately followed up with, here is the things that you get for that $4 million. It's hey, you're not getting a 5-year loan on this car. You're getting a 7-year loan. So do you really want 7 years? You're getting this interest rate, not that. It's the same thing. It's, hey, you're not getting recessed lighting or decorative lighting in the house. You're going to be switched outlets everywhere.
So, this is now, a dozen years into business, 15 years into business, whatever it is. What's this conversation like 2 years into business for you that you don't understand the optics of it? You don't understand that this job may not be a $4 million job. Like, what's changed? And is it actually, has that experience and that knowledge actually, is it doing more harm than good for you? Like for me, I had jobs that came in, right? And if it's early on in my career, as long as that number's more than the last, right? I did a bathroom and it was 20 grand. And now somebody comes to me and say they want 25 grand. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's sure as hell I can do this. This is perfect. Now I'm like questioning, can I do 25? What can I do for 25? What are the things I need to protect myself of? What conversations do I need to have? What expectations do I need to set so that my clients don't think that 25 grand gets them a $50,000 bathroom? And like, I look back at some of the things that I did early on in business, and like some of the ignorance probably could play to my benefit at this point now, where it's like, you just don't know.
Yeah, I think the ignorance definitely does play to your benefit early on. In some ways, in the sense that you go in and you become like you appear to be more competitive, but those lessons are a lot harder. Site protection is a great example, where it's like you'll spend 5-10 grand doing site protection for a renovation, but if you don't know about that, you don't charge the 5 or 10 grand, you do the project, what's the outcome? The client gets a little mad that the site's a little dusty, is it detrimental to the project? Probably not. Like they have a bad week and they're frustrated that the house is a mess, but you go in there and you sweep it up, or their cleaners come on Tuesday afternoons and then the house is clean. It's like, it's forgotten. So, I think some of the things that we have implemented as better contractors are kind of this white glove approach, and a lot of people, would be okay not having that.
Did you get pushback when you started? Like, right, you gain this experience, and I always say that it's like when I first started, I could do a bathroom in a week, 2 weeks, and then like 3 years into it, they were taking me 3 weeks, and then 6 years into it, they were taking me 6 weeks, and it's not it's just because I started implementing and integrating services and details into my process that were more time consuming.
Yeah, and if you zoomed out, like, and you said this one versus that one, the majority of clients would be like, I would be happy with both.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I think, a lot of what we do, not just you and I, like, is strictly ego driven.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, this is, it is to fuel the ego of being a better builder, of being the best builder, like being obsessed with the detail. Like, there's, it just, that is the nature of, I think you have to be slightly egotistical to be in business. Like, you have to
or even just to
shit.
want to continue to get better.
Right. It's like you're doing that. I think, your question about did I get pushback? Yeah, man, like, especially early on. And it was anything and everything. And what it was related to was confidence. And I remember I did this bathroom, and it wasn't even the bathroom. It was literally like rip out a tub and then install an undermount tub and a stand-up shower and re-tile it. Truthfully, I don't know if I ever did tile in my life. And I think this was my first tile job, and it was horrendous. But I'll never forget. I put together a proposal, super professional, but I had a line item that said miscellaneous fees in profit, or something like that. And he's like, what's miscellaneous fees? And I was like, God, I don't know. And he goes,
I forgot something.
He's like, can we like just get rid of that and I'll sign the contract? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I was like, it's just no idea. Didn't know what it was for. And the reality is, like, it was probably all the tile shit I had to buy, and like the site protection, and like the nuances of just running the job. But I didn't know. I wasn't confident. I didn't have the confidence because I'd never done it before.
Yeah.
And it's like
again, part of that has to, like, you have to eat a certain portion of that, but part of that should be put on the shoulders of our clients and the work that we're doing and our overhead for the year. Where, like, I think that the more experience you get, the better you get, the more that you want to really move ahead in business, like, everything becomes more expensive. I tell my consulting clients all the time, it's like, everything that we're going to talk about is just going to make your numbers go up. Like, you're just going to be more expensive. So you're going to realize that you're not charging for this. You're going to realize that your overhead isn't covering what you need to because your sales volume isn't enough. You're going to realize that, like, your labor rates are too low, that you're not capturing burden, inefficiencies, like, all of these things I'm going to tell you, your numbers are just going to keep going up, and you're having trouble landing work right now where you are. Yeah. So why, as you become more expensive, are you all of a sudden going to just like, oh, well, now I'll just charge more and I'll land these jobs? You're not going to.
Right.
So, like, as you gain experience, as you grow in business, you're going to become wiser. You're going to smarten up, and you're going to realize that, like, you've been undercharging and not capturing time, resources, energy, material, and you're going to get better. And along with that, you have to develop better marketing, better sales, a better lead generation and funnel, a better network, in order to substantiate that increase in what your cost is. And I think that most people don't understand that. And what they end up doing is they become better. They develop a better system. They are executing jobs at a higher level of execution, but they're not ever really capturing the additional time, energy, money, and resources that it takes to do that. and it just becomes bigger and bigger concessions on their behalf. And yeah, the numbers are bigger, but when you look at it at the end of the day, they're probably making a lower hourly rate.
Yeah, I mean, I had this great client when I was a solo guy, and they would call me literally every year and do another project at their house. And every year my pricing went up a little bit. It's like, oh, now I'm $75 an hour, like whatever it is. And every year, yeah, Nick, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best. And then one year I had 2 carpenters on staff. They called me. They were like, hey, we want to do, it was like crown molding in a room. And I had done like literally one room at a time the last, few years. So I go there for like a day or two, do some crown and leave. And I sent them a price and they're like, whoa, this is like really way more expensive than it usually is. I'm like, oh yeah, we're growing the business. I hired some guys, like, really exciting time for our business. Like, okay, well, we're going to go elsewhere. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, I've been your guy for 6 years. And I was like, oh, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
It was my price. And like, I remember being super butthurt about that. I'm like, what the hell, man? Like, I've done so much work. Like, I love those. Like, I've seen their kid grow up, like, all that stuff. And it's like, no, like, you were just it was a different time. It was a different business. It was a different rate. Like, and that's where a lot of us start, and probably a lot of you guys listening are, like, where it's like you're just a 1 or 2 man show that's just basically collecting based on your output.
So what do you think has to change when you look at like that example, right, where you're going from working by yourself, tool belt on, doing the business end, doing the invoicing, maintaining really low overhead, margins are probably much better, right? And then like you become more business savvy and you realize that you're not capturing a ton of those costs, and it's basically like on paper, yeah, it looks like I'm making money, but there's 100 hours a week that you're not capturing on back end stuff, where it's like, now I have a business, I need to be able to capture that within my overhead or within the work that is performed. How, like, what do you need to do in order to make that change, make that transition? Is it just new clients? Is it not working for those old clients? Like, and then what needs to change from a sales perspective where you're like, damn, I'm 40% higher than I used to be from a price perspective. What am I doing to sell this work? When I already had clients who were kicking back or pushing back on my rates when I was just a one-man band.
Well, this is the hard part and the issue with scaling is that when you are scaling your business and you're changing, and I go from a one-man show to having carpenters on staff, if that client is only hiring based on the fact of my price, like, that client doesn't become my client, is no longer my client, right? So my business has changed, and that means not only in the way we execute, but now it's who hires us. And that is, I think, something that is not understood until you go through that moment of like, all right, Elizabeth doesn't want us to work for her anymore.
So then, like, what's the angle there then, right? Where essentially
it's the
from
hard
one
part.
year to the next, the crown molding's the same, but now it just costs more. So like,
or they find someone else that is a solo guy that is going to charge the same hourly rate and just be, labor. For a business, like, this is what's so hard, is the fact that everything changes when it changes. It's not like, all right, now I have 5 guys and I'm going to send them to that client. That client doesn't see the value in that anymore. They saw the value in the fact that Nick Schiffer showed up and charged me $75 an hour and hung crown molding in 2 days.
So this is something that I run into, right? And to me, it comes down to, like, why would somebody rather go with a team of 3 than a team of 1? And there's reasons for doing that. And you could put, like, price aside, whatever it may be. Like, we're having a conversation where the one-man show is going to be less than that, but it could be even that the one-man show is going to be more expensive than that. But, like, why go with a team of people rather than one, or a guy who manages subcontractors. Like, there's reasons for doing all of that I've learned over the years, the things that I can do well and things that I can't do well. Like, for me, maybe you're more expensive because you have the overhead of a couple of guys, but you also can turn that job around faster and quicker than I ever will be able to, because with the amount of work that I can produce, the lead times for me getting to you are going to be longer, and then I'm also going to be on the job for longer.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to client, depends what the client values here. If the client's looking for a fast turnaround, all right, who's got the best availability? And then it's, all right, best availability, best quality, best price. It's like those, they're looking at it from that perspective. And, this is why I always say, for us, like we're management heavy. We have a strong management backbone to the way we run a business. That doesn't mean that the guy that shows up in a pickup truck can't build just as good or not a better home than me. But what I can say is, like, his process is just going to be different.
Correct.
Like, it's just a different process. So if you just value the fact that, like, you're just going to get what you get, there's not going to be as heavy of communication and like you might get full oversight. The guy might literally show up every single day, run the job, bags on, or no bags on, just run the job. But you're not going to have the team to support him in the office, the management, the coordination with architects. And that's fine if that's what the client wants.
Yeah, and like, I don't even, like, money, even at that point, really isn't part of that conversation. Like, if it was NS Builders and TRG Home Concepts, it's going to take me longer to do. Maybe the execution's better, but the communication isn't going to be as good. The invoicing isn't going to be as legitimate. Like, the software, the systems aren't going to be as robust. So it could be that we're the same exact price.
Right.
And
but what's the value? Like,
correct.
What value
what's important to the client?
Right.
Like, do they want a big team? Do they want it done sooner? Is quality of the utmost importance? Is having the owner of the company on site every day important? And, like, this is another thing that I tell my consulting clients, where it's like, just because you're small or just because you're big, it's really neither here nor there. It doesn't matter, even from a cost perspective. Like, for a long time, I thought that I had to be less money than bigger companies because I didn't have the overhead. But it's like, that really is irrelevant. It just comes down to aligning with my ideal client, because if I offer what they offer and what's important to them, price may go out the window just because I can do something different than you can do. But I also know that I can't build a 6,000 square foot house just on my own. Like, and if I do, it's probably not going to be, from a systems perspective, as fluid as what you're able to do. But is that important to my client? Or do they not care really how long it takes, and they just want me there every single day overseeing the work? Because maybe they live in a different state, or whatever the reason is.
All right.
But I think those are some of the biggest lessons that I've learned in the past 15 years, that, like, this industry is a bit of the wild, wild west. And yeah, there's rules. Yeah, there's standards. But if something works for you, it doesn't need to be what the rest of the industry does. Like, if you have clients that are good with what you're doing, and you've created a demand for the work that you're doing, like you've said before, it doesn't matter if I go in and before I prime, I paint all the walls pink, and then I paint them white after, just because they value my product. Like, it almost doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I charge them more for that. If that's part of my process and they want my process,
right,
and I'm confident in that, and I can sell that, and I know that the pink before the primer is going to get me to the end, and it's going to be like my clients, the expectations are going to be met, and they're going to be thrilled with it, then do whatever you have to do, charge whatever you have to do, whatever you want to. There really are no rules here. And I think that a lot of my experience has given me a ton of insight with regard to that, which then leads to confidence in what you're doing.
I think that confidence is everything. And I think, was on a phone call with another builder, got connected through a mutual friend, and we were just kind of sharing war stories. And he started rattling off these big builders who a lot of us would know. And he goes, dude, do you know that they literally don't have a process? And I'm like, yeah, man, like most people don't.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, but these guys are like massive, and you would think that they have their shit together. I'm like, no, I'm sure it's a few spreadsheets, and depending on the super, like they run it separately, and everything kind of comes back to the office, and you know they put out fires all day. Like it's how this industry is. It's completely fragmented, and I mean it's why. I mean, I think it's why so many people are interested in having structure and what we're sharing around. Like, here's how the system works, and he was like, I've built systems for every part of my business. And I started sharing them with what we promote through the Modern Craftsman. I'm like, dude, the Modern Craftsman was this idea that, hey, maybe we can share and help guys that are like $1 to $10 million implement process in their business. And that's what that's what the conversation started as. But then it turned into, I'm going to sit at my computer for hours at night fixing my process and making sure like it's legit and there's no holes in it, so I can share it with people.
Yeah.
Because I can't, like, if my process doesn't exist, then we have nothing to share. But then it became, well, it can't be half-assed, because then I'm going to get my, it's like getting caught with my pants down. It's like, no, I got that. This stuff needs to be dialed, and in doing that, has basically like shed light on the fact that, man, no one has this figured out.
Yep. Even
the big guys. Even like you would think, oh, this is how, everything is just, smooth sailing. No. We were talking about even the owner rep side. Like you're starting to see more and more owner reps get involved with these super luxury residential projects. And I've been chatting with a few builders that are working with them, and like, dude, they're a fucking nightmare. It's like, so I'm like, so hear me out. You're a builder, you're a general contractor, you don't have your shit figured out, but you're building a $20+ million home, and then you're plugging on someone else to manage you that doesn't have their shit figured out.
Yeah.
It's like there's layers to like this, and is that how quote unquote we're getting away with it? Is that there's just layers and there's enough to bury these issues? Like I'm confused. And it's, and I was talking to Julian the other day. I'm like, dude, I feel like we as a business I'm going off track here. We as a business, I get more qualified leads for projects that are outside of my geographic range.
Yeah.
And they're like, dude, please come to Michigan. We're trying to build a house. Budget's amazing. Works. Will you just like oversee it? And I'm like, what are we doing? Why can't, someone's listening to this like, I'll build it in Michigan. Yeah, I'd be happy to have a referral. Instead, people are like, will you just like help me manage it? I got someone right now. They're like, will you just plug in as kind of like a construction manager and work with the local team? I'm like, maybe. Like, I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure it's like essentially what Mark LaLiberte does with his consulting for the energy retrofits and everything else, where it's like, all right, you have a specialized approach to this, and you can work all over the country, and you have systems that are developed, refined, and able to be implemented. But yeah, like you wouldn't be able to handle certain aspects of that. Like you can't be responsible for all of the construction. You can't be responsible for the invoicing, the billing. So it would have to be like a very specialized portion of it. But like, does that really solve the issues? Or is it just prolonging and like exacerbating the fragmentation of our industry, where it's let's add one more fucking person to the mix right now?
I'm with you on that thought. However, I do think that if it's done correctly, it does fix the issue, because the number one complaint that you hear from people that build is always related back to bad communication. It's all like, no matter what. Oh, they were over budget. No, they weren't over budget. They just poorly communicated the budget. They were behind schedule. No, they weren't. They were actually on schedule, but they poorly communicated the fact that when you add a pool, it adds 8 weeks worth of work. Like that, it's always it always can be pinpointed back to communication, and that is what we're so focused on, through our process. We just finished the Echo Pond project, and I was chatting with the client, and I was like, hey, I'd love to, get some feedback. And they wrote, they were like, hey, we want to do this formally, but just like off the cuff, you guys were like, he raved about our communication. He was like, it's unbelievable how well you guys communicated through the process and always made sure that we understood what was going on. And he's like, and I have a unique perspective because my friend is currently building in X state with, this, X builder, and it's an absolute disaster. And they were reaching out to me like, hey, what was it like working with NS Build? And they were like, literally, we knew exactly what was going on at all times. Like, their communication is phenomenal. And I'm like, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I think like when it's done correctly, it can and would resolve the issues. The problem is, like, let's go back to 2 years in business to the core of this conversation. Like, until you realize, those mishaps or like how something is poorly communicated and see the reaction from a client, it's hard to listen to someone like me say like, just communicate better.
Yeah. Or how extensive the communication needs to be, or how are you structuring that? How are you capturing the amount of time? How are you developing those systems? Like, and I would assume that for a long time while developing those systems, there's probably a lot of time that you're not actually able to bill for or capture, where it's just like, I'm investing in myself to work out the kinks here, which I think is also tough because our industry, it's like everyone's learning everything for the first time. Right. There's no, other than I feel like what we're trying to do with Modern Craftsman, there's no playbook where it's like, hey, I want to start a construction business. What are all the things that I need to do? Right. Which I think is like what we're trying to do.
It's exactly what we're trying to do. It's, this guy who I was chatting with on the phone, he's like, man, I would love to just package this up and like be able to hand someone a playbook. And I was like, oh, let me share with what we're working on. And he's like, and then what? I'm like, oh, and then a lot of them come to the summit and we workshop this stuff in person. And he goes, dude, we gotta blow this up. Like, there should be 5,000 people showing up to this show. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, would love that. That you can't workshop with 5,000 people in a room.
No.
But the reality, but his point is valid in the sense that there's a lot of people that get into this year two, figuring stuff out. Like, let's bring it back to the fact that most of us get into this because of the craft. Mm-hmm. There is definitely a few of you guys listening that got into this because of the business aspect, and and it's fun. And I'm sure you've had conversations with other guys that had got into it for the opposite reason, and realize how like you're dealing with, on one hand, very different issues in the business, but they all kind of tie back to the greater thing of like, I just want to build good stuff. But yes, like, if someone handed me a playbook and said, Nick, here it is, like, here's step one on how you build this business, and like, do this and this will resolve your HR stuff, do this and this is how you know that you'll make money, do this and this is how you know how many projects that you need. Like, I think about just that alone. We were doing an exercise the other day, and Julian was like, hey, where are we at on our project capacity? I'm like, we're actually like basically at a break even. Like, we need to, we just wrapped up 2 projects. So like, billing will stop on those. We should be starting another project right now. And we have stuff that's being delayed. And he's like, what? And so I'm showing him the math, and it's like, damn, the math is mathing like this. Like, you would think that we're like cruising, like, yeah, but it's like, no, man, like, we're great. We're doing good. Like, our projects individually are great, but we really should have 2 more projects under construction like now.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys just don't even know that. It's like, every project's profitable. It's like, yeah, but do you know how much actual revenue you need to be putting in place on a monthly basis to just cover your nut, keep the lights on, as they say? Like, everyone, I think a lot of people think they know that number, but until you do that math is almost always more than you think it is.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I also think that like things just don't go according to plan.
Never.
And if you're not accounting for that, then yeah, like you're never gonna meet those numbers, because in a perfect world never really happens in construction. So like you're always gonna wind up on the short end of the stick there. I look back at starting out and all the mistakes that I made and the struggles that I had, and the confidence I think that I lacked in business, and ego getting in the way of making money and trying to prove myself and convince clients that what I wanted to be doing was what they should want from me. And I look now at what we've done from a business perspective and what we've developed and all the information that we've put out there and the conversations that I have with people and the courses that we've created. And I'm like, what would my business be like had I had something like this from the outset? Like, I started with zero business sense and almost zero construction knowledge, like on my own, right? Where it's like, yeah, I've done all of this stuff, but never without anyone beside me where I could be like, oh shit, that didn't go right. Not my job. And to have from the beginning a roadmap and a system and a tool set to be able to go into business and understand all aspects of what you need to do and have a roadmap for getting there, like life would be completely different.
Yeah,
business
man,
would be completely different.
I'm reading, they're sitting on my desk in front of me, these two business books, and I've read them. Let me back up. I've listened to them now twice, and I'm listening to them a third time because there's so much knowledge in it, and there's so much information in it. And I bought the soft cover books, like with the workbooks in them, because I'm like, I'm not retaining this, and I need to sit here and I'm going to dedicate time to re-listen to it with the book in front of me so I can sit there and scribble notes, because it's like when you're listening to it, it will walk through an example of, do this and do that, and then and you'll uncover this issue, and I'm like, okay, page 49, I gotta come back to that. Like, it just that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But when there's something like that that's available, this is more high level business. But to think about from a construction standpoint, where it's everyone just wants, just show me what I got to do. Show me what I have to understand, what I have to do. It's like going back to the conversation I had with Julian. It's like, hey, this is our revenue target per month. Okay, what does that mean? That means that we cover all of our bills. Here's our revenue target in terms of like making the profit that we want. Now he's got something to measure against. It's like going down to the carpenters in the field. Like, sometimes the carpentry moves pretty slow in the field. But it's like, if you don't give them a goal, it's like, hey, I need you to do all the crown molding in this room in 5 days. It will just take what it takes. It'll take 6, 7, 8, 10 days.
I also think, like, it's interesting. I haven't been on my DMs, but what I sent you last night about
worst DMs.
I am terrible.
I send you stories all the time, and then you're like,
yeah,
what was
they're
it?
always
I'm like,
expired.
bro, I don't fucking know, but it was funny.
But I sent Nick this conversation that a guy was having, that he has like a training business, and he was having a conversation about his business where for the past 15 years he's created content for free, and they also have like an online community, and he has in-person training that you can come and do. And people, it wasn't even about his company, it was somebody with a similar business model, were saying like, I can't believe that you're charging $2,000 to come spend a weekend and do that. And the conversation is like, we've invested 15 years and given out information and content for free for 15 years that costs us so much money. Like, was not profitable ever, that we self-funded, bootstrapped, and just bled money in order to get to a point where we're at now, where it's like you can charge this to be healthier, be safer, be smarter, be more profitable. Like, and that's not for everyone. But you can't really make a judgment call on what that's worth to somebody. And this was with like a training program, but it's like, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, even if it's an online course, even if it's going to Contractor Coalition Summit, like when you look at what you paid for a year of college compared to like what these businesses are charging for all of the blood, sweat, and tears that they had to experience for 15 years, it's like percentage points of that. I just thought it was a neat perspective to hear, where it's like you can't be making a judgment call on that stuff. And when you look at what went into making this happen and how much this is worth to certain people, it's a pretty interesting perspective and conversation to have. But yeah, like looking at what we're doing now and the mistakes that I made and the amount of time that I did not capture and had no idea how to do from a business perspective, to be able to tap into a network like what we've done, and this is not being conceited at all. I think, we receive emails daily from people who are expressing their gratitude for what we're doing. It's really cool to be a part of something that's so special. And I think that the longer that we do this, sometimes we become numb to like the impact that it's having on people and what it's like to be new in this industry and in construction and in business, and to get into this industry because you have a passion for craft, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I want to close my doors because I literally can't make money. It's neat to be a part of this and just see how far we've come, both personally and professionally. And I am 100% confident in saying that I would not want to go back to like the early days of running my business.
Not without a playbook.
No, I mean, like, I wouldn't even want to go like 2-3 years ago. No. Like 5 years ago is definitely the threshold where it's like I could probably handle 2-3 years ago. But like 4 or 5 years ago, like, no, I would never, and I would never want to go back.
No, it's and well said, because at the end of the day, something I said earlier is this is me like fixing my business every day. This is you fixing your business every day, being better and better and better. And, it's like, I'm taking all this stuff and giving it to my team, and like, this is how we're going to operate. And then giving it to you guys that are listening. Because truthfully, deep down, someone asked me recently, I was like, because I'm at this like crossroad of like, what do I focus on? Like, do I keep building, or do I double down on the podcast? And they're like, what do you want to be? Like, what do you want to be known for? I'm like, I want to be known for building cool shit. And they're like, then build. And I'm like, but I also want to be known to give back to my community. And they're like, then do the podcast. I'm like, yeah, that's the issue.
Day-to-day.
But at the end of the day, like that's exactly it. Like, hey, I'm gonna improve my business. Tyler's gonna improve his business, and as we do, you guys can have it too. You want to take it and be better. Like that is the goal. That's what we set out to have conversations about 9 years ago when we started this podcast, and now it's we'll give you it. It is more tangible, and you can grab onto it. I will say, you guys are listening to this podcast. We're going to talk about this stuff. We will always talk about this stuff. But anything that you want above and beyond that, you do need to sign up for our email. So sign up for the newsletter, and we have a ton of stuff in there. Someone asked me what that looks like in terms of like how, like why should I sign up for the email? So let me explain real quick. Podcast, that's all free content. Email, you're going to get more free content. Every once in a while, I'm going to drop in, hey, here's a template I've been working on. Here's the handbook we use in our company. Here's the guide for hiring. Like, that's the point. Like, I want to drip this stuff and share it with you guys. And then every once in a while, we're going to launch something that's like, hey, here's an actual playbook, step by step, 12 hours of content on how I run pre-construction or how I run the hiring process or the production process in our business. That's what that's for, is that as we develop this stuff, we're sharing with you and you guys have access to it. So sign up for the newsletter and you will get this stuff for free.
So obviously bad at DMs. I think I received, well, it was a group message on Instagram to my business and yours and Nick Schiffer, and I'm not going to mention their name, but it was pre-Easter, and I think I responded yesterday or maybe this morning, but X his name, but hey, this is so-and-so from the Circle community, FYI. Just wanted to drop you both a note and say thank you for the Q&A, which is just a live Q&A that we hosted last week. The Circle community, the podcast, everything else that you do. I spent the first part of my career in investment banking before construction and design piqued my interest about 6 years ago. When I left my career in finance to start my business, the podcast was the single most helpful resource I consistently turned to in understanding how to best grow my business, manage client expectations, and set us up for success. We're just starting year 3 and did about 1.2 million in work last year, albeit the beginning of this year has been a little bit slow, but you guys have played a big part in our growth to date, so thank you. So stuff like that, obviously,
Oh yeah,
it comes in on the regular, but like you lose sight of that and it's tough, but I'm very grateful for the people who reach out and send notes like that and just express their gratitude for what we're doing and that it's helpful, because at the end of the day, that's the big goal for us, right? We're doing this for ourselves. We're doing this to fix problems within our own lives and business. But if we can get that information to you, I think it's a win-win for everyone. So appreciate it.
With that, we'll see you guys next week.